All right, today we're diving into a tactic so dangerous, so absolutely desperate, that it was actually banned twice. And yet, it completely turned the tide of the war in the Pacific. This is all about the Battle of the Bismarck Sea. For the Allied bomber crews back in 1943, this question wasn't some kind of riddle. No, it was a life or death problem they were facing on every single mission. The Japanese Navy, it seemed completely untouchable from the air, and every single time a bombing run failed, it cost lives. The stakes were just getting higher and higher, and you know what? The old ways of doing things, they just weren't working. So let's put ourselves in their shoes. This was the absolutely impossible situation facing a guy named Major Ed Liner and the entire 5th Air Force in March of 43. See, they had one job: stop a massive Japanese convoy. And this wasn't just any convoy. It was carrying 7,000 troops to reinforce New Guinea. Every single ship that slipped through meant a longer, bloodier, and more brutal war in the jungle. Okay, so why wasn't it working? Well, high-altitude bombing was, to put it mildly, a mathematical nightmare. Imagine being the bombardier. You're up there. You line up a perfect shot on a Japanese warship, but by the time your bombs actually hit the water, the target has just steamed right on out of the way. You're not bombing where the ship is, you're bombing where it was. You're literally bombing history. And get this, it took 37 seconds. Think about that for a moment. 37 seconds. In that amount of time, a Japanese destroyer at full steam could travel the length of over 3 football fields. So any direct hit from that high up, it was basically pure dumb luck. The crews would fly back, develop their film, and see these perfect patterns of bombs, landing in the empty water right next to the ships. Infuriating. So what did all that effort get them? A 3% hit rate. 3%. I mean, that's just abysmal. And this failure, it came at a devastating cost. We're not just talking about wasted bombs here. We're talking about the constant loss of planes and highly trained crews to Japanese anti-aircraft fire. It was just an unsustainable meat grinder. All right, so the old way was clearly failing, and that's when the commander of the 5th Air Force, a guy named General George Kenney, came up with something so dangerous his own command banned it not once but twice. They literally called it a reckless disregard for equipment and personnel. But Kenney and Major Ed Lanner, they believed it was their only shot. And this was the idea: skip bombing. I mean, the concept is brilliant. Instead of fighting against gravity from 10,000 feet, you use the ocean's surface itself as a weapon. You fly in super low, super fast, and literally skip the bomb across the water like a flat stone, right into the side of the ship. You completely eliminate that 37-second drop time. It sounds simple, right? But in practice, absolutely terrifying. And when I say terrifying, just look at these numbers. The plan called for insane precision. We're talking about flying a massive B-25 bomber just 50 feet off the water, going nearly 300 miles an hour straight at a warship that's shooting everything it has at you. If you mess up any one of these things, the altitude, the speed, the release point, the bomb either bounces right over the ship, sinks to the bottom of the ocean, or, you fly your entire plane straight into the target. So it's no surprise what the pilots thought of it. They said it was suicide. And you can see why, right? It goes against every single survival instinct you're ever taught as a pilot. You just don't fly low and slow directly at an enemy who's actively trying to kill you. But they were completely out of options. This crazy, desperate gamble, it was all they had left. Now, to even have a prayer of surviving that run, Leonard's B-25 Mitchells were secretly modified. They basically turned them into flying gun platforms. They ripped out the bombardier station and crammed the nose with 8 50 cal machine guns, put 4 more on the sides. The whole point was to spray the enemy ship with so much lead, we're talking over 200 rounds a second, that the anti-aircraft gunners would be forced to duck their heads down just for a few precious seconds. And that's the window you needed to drop the bomb. So March 2nd, 1943. It's time. This untested, suicidal tactic is about to get its ultimate test against a full-strength Japanese convoy. Liner and his men had been practicing in secret on an old, rusted-out shipwreck. But now, they were about to try it for real. And this wasn't just a simple charge. The plan was this beautiful, multi-layered symphony of destruction. First, Australian bow fighters would roar in low to strafe the ships and get all the gunners' attention. Then, high-altitude B-17s would drop their bombs, not really to hit anything, but to force the ships to break formation and scatter. The whole point was to create absolute chaos just before Miner's squadron of B-25s even showed up on the horizon. And Lunar's orders to his pilots were just crystal clear. Each bomber gets one target. That's it. You make your run, you drop your bomb, and you get the hell out. No coming around for a second pass. There were no second chances. This had to work the first time, with total efficiency and maximum possible destruction.
So, imagine you're Ed Linner. You're screaming in, at just 40 feet off the waves. You line up on a transport ship, open fire with all those nose guns to suppress the crew. At 300 yards out, you release your bomb. You yank back on the stick, pull up hard, your whole vision is just blue sky, and then a moment later, your entire B-25 is physically thrown sideways by the shockwave of the explosion behind you. Holy cow, it had worked.
That initial attack was just stunningly fast. In the first 90 seconds, 4 ships were hit. The entire Japanese convoy was thrown into absolute chaos. And the results? Well, they were catastrophically one-sided. I mean, just look at the raw numbers from the battle, which lasted a couple of days. The Japanese lost 12 ships, all 8 of their transports, and 4 of the 8 destroyers escorting them. And in exchange for completely neutralizing an entire invasion force, the Allies lost just 7 aircraft. But, the really crucial point here wasn't just about the ships. It was the human toll. It's estimated that around 4,500 Japanese soldiers and sailors were killed, compared to only 13 Allied airmen. An entire invasion force was just wiped out before it could even get close to New Guinea. So, the reinforcement mission was an absolute total failure. Of the 7,000 soldiers who set out, fewer than 1,200 even managed to struggle ashore. And those who did? They arrived exhausted, with no weapons, no supplies, no organization. They were completely combat ineffective. The Japanese supply line to New Guinea had been, for all intents and purposes, strangled. As you can imagine, the Battle of the Bismarck Sea sent shockwaves through every navy and air force on the planet. The Japanese immediately canceled all future large convoy operations if they were within range of Allied land-based aircraft. Just like that, a new era of naval warfare had begun. And this chart right here shows you exactly why. The statistics were just undeniable. Skip bombing was proven to be 15 times more effective than high-altitude bombing. The forbidden, suicidal tactic had become the new standard doctrine, literally overnight. But for the man who innovated it, Major Ed Linner, that victory came at a profound personal cost. After flying 88 combat missions, the Army wanted him to come home and teach this deadly technique that he had perfected, and he refused. He just couldn't bear to send more men on those missions because he knew the terror of them so intimately. And these numbers, they really show you why he made that choice. The mathematics of survival for the pilots who flew these missions, it remained absolutely brutal, even after the tactic was proven to work. A nearly 30% chance of being killed in action. The psychological stress was just so immense, it broke the very men who had to fly those missions. So what's the big takeaway here? Innovation definitely wins wars. A brilliant, desperate solution really can change the course of history. But the weight of that discovery, the burden of proving that it worked, that's carried by the handful of people who had to fly straight into the fire, knowing there was a very real chance they weren't coming back. It's just a powerful reminder that victory, especially in war, is always, always paid for at a tremendous human price.